Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In my hand right now, I've got two absolute legends of the iPhone lineup. On the left, the iPhone 13 Pro in this classic graphite, which I still think is one of the best colors Apple ever made. And on the right, the iPhone 14 Pro in gold. Now, I know what you're thinking. You might be wondering, like, with the iPhone 17 Pro already out and absolutely crushing it with that 12 gigs RAM and everything, why are we even talking about these old phones? Well, here's the thing. The price on these has dropped a lot on the used market, and honestly, they are stealing the show for anyone who wants that pro experience. You know, the premium build, the cameras without breaking the bank. But the real question is, are they actually still great in late 2025? I've been using both of these heavily, one as a daily driver for years and one as a dedicated backup. And I've got some interesting thoughts, especially if you're confused about whether to upgrade from an older phone or which one of these two to buy. Let's get into it. So real quick bridging here, let's rewind. What was the big deal when these came out? Because context matters, right? The 13 Pro for me was like the MVP of that generation. It was the S-year perfection. It gave us that 120Hz ProMotion display for the first time. That was the moment iPhones finally felt fast. And the 14 Pro, that was the birth of the dynamic island and the always-on display. It changed the face of the iPhone. But you know, holding them side by side today, the gap isn't as wide as you'd think. But there are some deal breakers you need to know about. Let's talk design and display. The 13 Pro has the notch, obviously. The 14 Pro has the dynamic island. Personally, since I've been using the 15 Pro and now the 17 Pro as my main devices, I've gotten used to the dynamic island. So looking back at the 13 Pro, the notch feels a bit retro, sure, but it's not intrusive. You stop noticing it after like 10 minutes. And here's the cool part. Both of these are running the public stable release of iOS 26. You guys know Apple introduced that new liquid glass aesthetic with iOS 26, right? It's super satisfying. The animations have this weight to them, almost like you're pushing fluid around the screen. Surprisingly, the 13 Pro's display handles that liquid glass look just as beautifully as the 14 Pro. The contrast, the deep blacks, the colors are still popping, and that 120Hz smoothness is still there. I was worried the older GPU in the 13 Pro might stutter with the new heavy animations, but if you're worried that the 13 Pro feels old software-wise, don't be. It looks and feels incredibly modern. Okay, let's talk performance. I actually Geekbenched these recently just to see the raw numbers because I was curious how they hold up against the new software. So on the iPhone 13 Pro, I got a single core score of 2,426 and multi-core of 5,995. On the iPhone 14 Pro, it's a bit higher at 2,692 single core and 7,018 multi-core. Now on paper, the 14 Pro looks stronger, but what does that mean in real life? My day-to-day experience with both of these is still really decent. Apps open quick, swiping is smooth, I don't feel a lag. Here is a key thing though that I really want to highlight, the RAM. Both of these phones have 6 GB of RAM. Now if you're coming from a base model iPhone like the 12 or 13 which only had 4 GB, this is where you feel the upgrade. These Pro models are way better at keeping apps open in the background. I used to hate how my base 13 would constantly reload apps. You know the feeling, you pause a YouTube video to answer a text, you come back and the app refreshes. It's annoying. With 6 GB on these, multitasking is solid. However, and this is the caveat, if we compare this to the iPhone 17 Pro, which has that massive 12 GB of RAM, yeah, there's a gap. The 17 Pro is just future-proofed for the long run, but for right now, for 2025 apps, 6 GB on these two is still surprisingly good for today's standard. Now this is where it gets interesting, battery life. So for full disclosure, my review of this 13 Pro applies to the 13 Pro Max too. The Max just gives you more screen and bigger battery size, but the logic is the same. My 13 Pro battery health hit 71% recently, and honestly, it sucked. It was unusable. I was charging it like 2, maybe 3 times a day. The standby time was terrible. I'd leave it on my desk and come back to 20% drain. So I actually did a little DIY project. I bought an aftermarket battery with double power from a brand called Cortex and replaced it myself. It was actually pretty easy, you know, just heating up the seal, popping the screen. Now, it's technically at 100% health. Sure, I get that unknown part message in settings because it's not a genuine Apple part. Apple really hates when we fix our own stuff, but no problem. The performance is back to being really great. It handles a whole day on a single charge, just like when it was new. If you have a 13 Pro and the battery is dying, I honestly think it's the best time to just replace the battery rather than spending thousands of dollars on a new iPhone. It feels brand new again. On the other hand, my iPhone 14 Pro is at 80% health. It's still on the original battery, it's just okay. I honestly don't notice a massive improvement in efficiency between the 14 Pro and the 13 Pro. They feel pretty similar battery-wise, so don't upgrade to the 14 Pro just thinking you'll get magical battery life. Okay, camera time. This is usually the big differentiator for people. The 13 Pro is great. It takes amazing photos, but it has one real downside that bugs me as a creator. Cinematic mode. On the 13 Pro, it is locked to 1080p. It looks good, but if you're trying to crop it for vertical content or high-res YouTube videos, that hurts a bit because the 14 Pro can do 4K cinematic. Also, the 14 Pro was the first to introduce that 48 megapixel main sensor. It's sharper, yeah. When you zoom in on landscape shots, you see more detail. But here's my honest recommendation, and I'm being real with you. The upgrade from 13 Pro to 14 Pro camera-wise is incremental. It's small. Unless you are a pro photographer shooting in RAW, you might not even notice. I actually skipped the 14 Pro as my daily driver. I went from 13 Pro, then 15 Pro, and now 17 Pro. If you are sitting on a 13 Pro right now, I don't think you should upgrade to the 14 Pro. It's not enough of a jump. But if you do want to upgrade, I think you should stretch for the iPhone 17 Pro. The 17 Pro gives you that massive triple 48 megapixel setup and the 8x telephoto zoom. That is a huge upgrade. Going to the 14 Pro just feels like a baby step. Quick note on software features. Like I said, iOS 26 runs great on both. But what about Apple Intelligence? Well, honestly, neither of these phones support it. You need an iPhone 15 Pro or newer for that because of the NPU requirements. But for me, it's not a huge deal. You know, Apple Intelligence is still kinda in that early beta feeling stage. It's cool, but it's not life-changing yet. Personally, I usually use alternatives that are more powerful like Gemini or ChatGPT, which run perfectly fine on these phones as apps. They are smarter, faster, and don't drain the battery as much as the on-device processing. So don't let the no Apple Intelligence thing scare you away. You aren't missing much yet. Okay, before we wrap up, here are some things you need to consider. The downsides, the biggest one, the Lightning port. Both the 13 Pro and 14 Pro are stuck on Lightning. My iPhone 15 Pro and 17 Pro are USB-C and life is just easier with one cable for everything. My iPad, my Mac, my phone. Going back to these feels a bit annoying having to find that specific cable. Also, gaming. I do some gaming on these, testing out the new titles, and while they play high demanding games well on high settings, they do get warm. Not annoying heat where you can't hold it, but noticeably warm during long sessions. The 17 Pro manages heat way better thanks to new Apple Vapor Chamber, but these older chips definitely feel the thermal pressure. So, conclusion. For me, the iPhone 13 Pro and 14 Pro are surprisingly really great on today's standard. They don't feel like old phones. If you want the absolute best value, the iPhone 13 Pro is a steal right now. It has the 120Hz display, great cameras, and if you swap the battery like I did, it's a beast. It's probably the best value iPhone on the market. The iPhone 14 Pro is great if you really want that dynamic island or 4K cinematic mode, but it's in an awkward middle ground regarding price. If you have the budget, maybe stretch to the iPhone 15 Pro for the USB-C and titanium design, or just go all out for the 17 Pro for the long run. Anyway, that's just my thought. I hope this helps you decide. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.